Hello, everyone. I was basically suggested to maybe do a book to movie comparison of the series. Now, I've not seen the last two movies, but I just recently watched the second one. So, right now I'm going to do the first one, and I'm going to be doing both a book and movie review of The Hunger Games. Now, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with this series so far, both book and movies. And I'll get into why. So, I'll start with the plot. The book revolves around a 16-year-old girl named Katniss Everdeen. Katniss lives in District 12 of Panem with her mother and her little sister, Primrose, or who she just calls Prim most of the time. Now, about 73 years prior to this, and we'll get into what Panem is. Um, well, actually, probably before 73 years because it's the games that have gone on for 73 years. Basically, after natural disasters and stuff like that, America fell. They went into like this apocalypse kind of thing, I guess you would call it. And so the country, the nation, rose again as the country of Panem. And basically, instead of being the land of freedom, the democracy that we used to have, Panem is basically a capital full of rich people and 12, formerly 13 districts that are, they're basically the poorer people, is what it is. And what happened was, because they're rich and wealthy, they pretty much don't have to really work and they can spend their time kind of doing stupid things like they dye their skin and put implants to make them look like animals and a whole bunch of other weird stuff because they have money and time and they really don't have to do anything else. The districts, however, are responsible for supplying the capital with all the goods that they have. And the people were getting tired of kind of working their asses off and supplying these rich people while their own children and families are starving. They're working in bad conditions and to the point of starvation, and they really don't get to enjoy the benefits of their work, but yet these rich people do. Not only that, but the government was sending in what they call jabberjays. And then I think it was them that made it with maybe mockingbirds. And isn't that how, I think that's how they created the whole mockingjay thing. And jabberjays were like genetically created birds like that were sent in to record conversations. So the people basically got tired of working, starving, being spied on, and having to obey this government of lazy, rich people. So the 13th district led a rebellion. And basically, what happens was they went to war with the capital, and because the capital, um, is advanced in some of their things, they were able to basically wipe out the 13th district. And as punishment for following them, what they did to the other districts was create this thing called the Hunger Games. which says that for every 2 Capitol citizens killed, they are to hold a reaping where each district randomly picks a boy and a girl. They have to be from the ages of 12 to 18. And they're all transported to the Capitol. And they are put into an arena where people will basically watch them fight to the death until there is one person left. And that person gets fame and riches and stuff, and that's supposed to be the Capitol's way of showing, mercy, basically, of showing that they forgive the people. So the story is told from the point of view of Katniss. Now, 5 years, I think about 5 years or so prior to the story, just like 73 with the games, Katniss's father had died in the mines. District 12 is the coal mining district. So her father and a few other people had died. This sent her mother into this deep depression, and she basically left her children to starve. So the only way that Katniss was able to survive was to learn to hunt. So on Reaping Day, Katniss's sister has just turned 12, and that is the year that you start entering your name into the bowl for the games. Now each year, your name goes in there again, meaning they don't take it out or whatever, they keep adding. So if you're like 13, your name is in there twice. And this right here is kind of where the movie started to lack a little bit. Now, I seen the movie first, and I liked the plot, and then I found the book in the thrift store, and I go, what the hell? I like the plot from the movie, so I'm going to read the book, and usually if I like a movie and I know it's based on a book, I always want to go and find the book and read it. Now, even going back to the movie after I read the book, I'm going to say that I think they did a phenomenal job on picking people to play the characters. I really thought that they did them justice, and they just really brought the characters to life. What bothered me about the movie was the certain scenes and the little aspects that they left out. I know they're little, but I think those certain little aspects really added to the emotion of the story. They really shaped who the characters were because they created the circumstances that they lived in, and that attributed to the results of their personality, the games, how things all went down. So there's a thing called the Tesseract, which is basically if you add your name in more times, that you can get like these free government like voucher things, I think, for like oil or grain, basically stuff you need to live off of. Stuff you need in order to survive. So Katniss and her friend Gale, who's a little bit older, their names are in there several times, and that was basically their way of feeding their families. And that's something I wish the movie would have touched upon a little bit, because I think you kind of get more of an understanding about the control the government has over them. I think the author, Suzanne Collins, could have done a little bit of a better job of making certain things a little bit more realistic or putting more detail into it. So it seemed like it could have happened a little bit more. There's a scene in the book where she's talking about the Tesseract and everything, and then she goes to talk to, I think her name is Madge or Mage, who is the governor's daughter. And of course, because she is not poor or as poor as Gale or Katniss's family, she doesn't have to do the Tesseract where she has to put her name in more times, you know, to, feed her family and keep them warm and everything else. Because it's basically like, does my child starve now, or do I up the chances of them going to this game so maybe they can eat tonight and everything? Because they may or may never go to these games, so you can really see the dilemma that people have. And you can also see where it's kind of one of the government tricks to keep the people from uniting, because if one's a little bit richer than the other and they don't have to do stuff like that, then there's kind of that animosity there. So what happens is, despite the fact that her name is in that bowl like 20 something times, it's actually her sister that is called, and she ends up taking her place because, she really cares for her sister, and her sister's only 12 years old. What I really liked about the story and the movie, because I think, like I said, the actors really captured that a lot, was the characters and their personality. They're not one-dimensional, and they don't, like Katniss, she's a very strong-willed character, but she also has her flaws. I mean, she's a 17 or 16, I think, in this book, year-old girl who takes her sister's place in this death fight. And Peeta Mellark, the boy who was chosen, is a boy who once, even though she never really spoke to him, is a boy who once purposely burnt bread, because he's the baker's son, and took a beating so he can give her bread so she wouldn't starve one day. And now he's in the games with her now, so she is kind of faced with all these problems. Like I said, her mother was once very depressed, and she has a very hard time trusting her mother and her mother's actions, and she also has a big animosity towards her mother, and she's struggling to forgive her for what she did. But at the same time, she's also trying to be understanding that her father's death caused her mother to be like this. So she has that. Other than these games, she has all that to worry about. Now, she's going into the games where only one person can come out alive, and the boy tribute that's going in with her is somebody who once saved her from starvation. Their mentor, because when you win the games, you become mentors, is basically a drunk. Um, but don't get me wrong, he has his own personality in the book, and you can kind of see his personality, like I said, and his wisdom for things. It, like I said, what I just loved about this book is that the characters were very realistic, because they were not perfect. They weren't. I mean, you got some of the capital people, like the president, who enjoys power and enjoys watching these games, and just all the control that he has, and then the capital citizens who are kind of oblivious to the real shit that's going on in the world. But for the main characters, they just had multiple sides to them, like a real person. They weren't like a total ass or a total goody goody. They were just real human like characters, and that's what I loved. They, struggled with things. They struggled with these horrible decisions. And I think it was really, really good that they chose to, or she chose to write the book in first person. I think Katniss was a great narrator throughout the book. And that's one of the books that both have a good plot and really get into a character's head. Because a lot of people say that first person is more character driven, which it is, and third could tend to be more plot driven. I honestly think books like The Hunger Games and Harry Potter, which one is like this one first person, and stuff like Harry Potter is third person, I think they do a good job of really bringing out both character and plot in different ways. And people are like really on Katniss about being a stronger female lead because unfortunately we have people like Bella in literature. Don't get me wrong, I read the first Twilight book. I didn't think it was all that horrible, but it wasn't all that great either. And Bella really wasn't the best female role model. Definitely not compared to Katniss. But what I liked about the book and the movie was that this battle wasn't just about strength or whatever, or being the fastest or being, able to climb. Of course, you had to have um, be healthy physical to go into this. At least you hoped you were, because it was it's a matter of life and death in these games. But what I really loved was that a lot of the advantages that they had um, in their survival was intelligence and being clever and stuff like that. Uh, like one of Peeta's tricks was camouflage. He used to decorate the cake, so he knows how to like you know design and kind of like blend in with things. Um, Rue, the little girl that she met, one of her things was she was a good climber. She was very small, but she was also quite fast. So all the tributes had their own kind of strengths and weaknesses. And like I said, I really like that a lot of it was based around thinking too, and not just physical. The thing that disappointed me, like I said about the movie, was the things that they left out, as I just said a little while ago. Like the thing about the Tesseract and the scene with Mage. Mage is completely cut out of the movie. That scene wasn't even in there. Avoxes. They don't just take the kids to the arena and like make them fight. They treat this as a whole like reality show, like the sporting event and everything. They dress them up, they give them interviews, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And they're like fed really good and like treated like royalty almost compared to what they live in the districts. So Katniss and Peeta are at the table, and see they cut a lot of this out too, and I think that was kind of bad because you don't really get a feel of how poor they really were. out in the districts. Like they're sitting at the table and he kind of like hands or slides her a cup, whatever. Peeta does to Katniss, and he tells her that it's something called hot cocoa. So she's never had hot chocolate before. She goes on to say that she's never ridden in a car, I don't think, and she's never had a shower. Like I think they have like only baths or they wash themselves in the lake or whatever, but she's never actually had a shower. That's how poor they are over there. And in their rooms or throughout the hotel or whatever they live in during the times before the games, they are served by these people called Avoxes. Now, Avoxes basically are people who have done something wrong and they are punished by the Capitol. And how they punish them is basically they cut out their tongue so they cannot speak. And they are made to be servants to the tributes. And so, in the story, and this is never really explained in the movie, and that's what I didn't like, Katniss mentions, like I said in the story, that she actually recognizes one of the Avoxes. One day, her and Gale were hunting in the woods, and they saw two children that looked like they were from the Capitol. They were dressed like that's where they were from, and they were running. The Capitol hovercraft basically came over, or whatever. They killed the boy, and they took the girl. And so Katniss recognizes the girl, and that's another thing that she kind of has to deal with, is that she recognizes the girl, and she's pretty sure that the girl might recognize her. And she kind of feels bad that she didn't do anything to save her. But the problem is that their hunting is actually illegal, and they can get in trouble. So that's kind of another thing she has to face, that before going into this arena, she's seeing this person that she watched be kidnapped. The main thing that was really disappointing from book to movie was the cut of dialogue. It was in there, but it was cut short. And that really disappointed me when it came to Katniss and Rue. Because I thought that scene in the book was one of the most saddest things I've ever seen, but also one of the most beautiful. Rue was a girl from District 11, and Katniss really took a liking to her because she first kind of helped save Katniss, and she also reminded her, because of her age and everything, of her sister Prim. And again, I think you would have really got a better understanding of Panem and the control of the government and the oppression of the people if this dialogue was not cut out of the movie. I mean, they talked and everything, but it was really like shortened down, because in the book, Rue tells Katniss about her district, which is District 11, and its agriculture, and how, despite the fact that they grow the food, they're not allowed to eat it, and they are severely punished in front of everyone if they're caught doing it. In fact, a little boy who was kind of special needs, who took the special pair of glasses, he was actually killed for it. And the whole scene with what happens to Rue, I really don't want to give spoilers away, but again, this is a book about where children are made to fight to the death. So you can kind of tell basically what ends up happening to Rue. Now, I think that part, the movie did really well. both actresses just were like amazing in that scene, and it's just heartbreaking. And I think they really, really brought that scene to life, and that's one of my favorite scenes in the movie, despite the fact of how sad it is, because I think that was a part that did the book justice in bringing it to life. I really liked, the chemistry between the two actors in the movie. I thought it was a great mix, and overall, I didn't hate the movie. I thought it was really well acted. It really brought it to life. I was just disappointed on the things they left out because those type of books that like the Hunger Games, you really want to see that world come to life. You really want all that dialogue and everything between the characters because that really gave them personality. That gave them a realistic feel, a human feel. And especially scenes like that, which I'm happy they kept in because it really, really showed humanity and kindness can still be there in a time of darkness and, you know, just hopelessness. So, yeah, I will be reviewing Catching Fire, and I'm just gonna say that while I'm flip flopped on which book I like better, I definitely like the first Hunger Games movie better than Catching Fire, and I'll get into that into my next video. So, I don't want to make this video too long, and I don't want to make it too short. I wanted to, explain what I loved about the book and what I liked about the movie and what I thought the movie could have done better. But I also don't want to give everything away because then there's no point of you watching or reading it. So it really, sorry, it really, really is a good, well written story with good, well written characters. Both book and movie are very good. I prefer the book because of its detail, but like I said, they're both still good. So check them both out. Read the book first. I didn't, but you should. Read the book first, then watch the movie, and then see what it's missing. So, thanks for watching, and see you later.